Welcome to the Mental Health Boot Camp podcast. This is the podcast where four mental health professionals, three of us Canadian, one of us American, serve you cutting edge mental health knowledge. I am Dr. Ryan Howes, a clinical psychologist from Pasadena, California.
And I am Dr. Brooke Lewis, a registered clinical counselor from Coquitlam. And I'm Joanna Boyd, a registered clinical counselor, also from Coquitlam. That's not what she sounds like, but anyway.
Wow, Joanna, your voice changed.
Very 3 octaves higher there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm Chris Boyd, clinical counselor from Coquitlam.
That was great. Yeah, that wasn't really Joanna Boyd. That was her impersonator, Brooke.
Just in case anyone was wondering.
Yeah, just in case you couldn't quite tell, because it was spot on.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Joanna is otherwise occupied, but we are going to make do as a trifecta of experts here, right? Yes. So I hope you guys enjoyed the last week. We had our Independence Day on the 4th of July last week. You had Canada Day, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
We had a lot of fireworks on our 4th of July, which you guys don't even do. You save those up for Halloween, if I'm not mistaken.
We do. Which
is wacky. As if Halloween,
wacky folks.
As if Halloween doesn't have enough going on with costumes and spooking and like trick-or-treating and all that stuff. You get fireworks too on that day.
Yeah, but it adds to the ambiance with the like low-lying smoke covered. Well, it's not even always low-lying, but like the cold air and the kind of the smoke and the smell of them. And plus BC right now, loop this in, BC is like on fire from wildfires. So if we did do them in the summer, that would be potentially really bad and hazardous. So not that California is not.
Oh yeah.
Dry and Tinder, but.
Yeah, we're just. Yeah. I think if you were to ask most people from the US these days, I think people would probably say, yeah, let's just do fireworks for every holiday, you know? Okay. All right. Memorial Day, Labor Day, Arbor Day, Grandparents' Day. Just let's do some fireworks, everybody. We just like blowing stuff up. That's what we're into down here.
Yeah, it's way more accessible down in the United States. Up here, they're trying to regulate it more and more and more. So I'm not even sure if you could even buy fireworks our last Halloween.
You know, I'm even not sure how legal it really varies from place to place down here. Like certain towns, you can't buy anything, you can't light anything, you can't set off any fireworks. But somehow we have a massive underground fireworks network that just just some sort of a pipeline of fireworks showing up, and people are blowing stuff up all over the place.
Yeah. So how about you? Do you have a guy? Do you have someone that sells you fireworks?
Who's my guy?
This should be an off-the-record conversation.
Oh, it's true.
You're incriminating Ryan right now.
Honestly, I'd tell you if I did, but I don't. I don't have a fireworks guy. I mean, I live in one of those areas where if you're caught with fireworks, they throw you in the slammer. Maybe not that bad, but it's a big fine, hefty fine. No, it's never really. I like watching fireworks. Once or twice a year. We do them on New Year's Eve sometimes too, but I'm not that big of a fan. I don't need that so much.
So were you saying that even after the 4th, there's firecrackers almost every night for what?
Oh yeah, for a couple of weeks. Preceding and after the 4th, they're at least here in LA. The fireworks season is just going strong.
In fact, dare I say that it's booming?
Oh, Brooke! Wow. It's pretty harsh. We're actually recording after sunset, and I'm sure if I were to stick my microphone outside right now, we could hear some fireworks going off. Just because people have them and they want to blow stuff up.
July 8th, special day.
Special day for fireworks. All summer is fireworks summer. Crazy. Yes, we're into that.
Cool.
So yes, you guys, I hope you're having a healthy summer filled with self-care and taking good care of your minds and bodies. Good wellness summer for you guys.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. And I practiced some relaxation last week after our compelling conversation.
Oh, good.
So I did some wind down exercises, but also did some relaxation. So it worked out really well. So I feel very rejuvenated.
I heard a little feedback from a listener who said, I thought you guys were going to go into a few more practical exercises about, regarding relaxation. We mentioned things like progressive relaxation and deep breathing and stuff like that, but kind of thought maybe we'd get into some more, open up the bag of tricks of relaxation tips and tools.
Okay, maybe I should change my topic.
No, not necessarily, but we can keep that in mind, I guess, going forward. People kind of like to have their something pragmatic, something to try. So we did talk about progressive relaxation, where you flex a muscle group and relax it kind of intentionally, going up and down your body. So we thought maybe a meditation as relaxation would be something that we could talk about too. And so we've done some mindfulness stuff in the past. We could talk more about that maybe sometime in the future. Meditation as a path towards relaxation. So we are very eager to hear feedback from anybody. Please drop us a line anytime at info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com. Let us know what you think, what you'd like to hear about.
Yep. And also, if you are reading the book that we're going to talk about next week, I'm going to make that plug now.
Right now.
Week, right?
Yes.
After me. So Black Swan is the book. Next week, we will be discussing it.
Yeah.
Yes, we will. I'm halfway through, and I feel like I have a philosophy degree already.
That's just a snippet. We'll get into that next week. I have some thoughts.
Just back to relaxation. That's not what the book's all about. I did a lot of mindfulness over the past week. So just being in nature, trying to focus on the senses. If a thought popped into my mind, I'd notice it non-judgmentally, with curiosity, focus back on what I was noticing. So I was trying not to get sucked into the planning or the focus, rehashing anything within my mind. It helps that I actually snuck away to a town called Souk by the beach. So I got to sit by the beach and just really focus on what was around me. I also got to play my Minecraft, and I've actually built 3 spas in my Minecraft world. So I actually hung out in one of my spas, which was good.
You hung out in a Minecraft spa?
Yeah, I built 3 different ones. So
okay, that's great.
I went to one of those and hung out for a bit. So
that's awesome.
It's a very meditative focused or mindfulness focus is what I practiced over the past week. You can't go wrong with nature, right? We have a strong connection to nature. So
how is Souk spelled?
Sooke.
Sooke. And is it on Vancouver Island, or is it on?
Yes.
All right.
Across from Port Angeles.
Okay. Wow. Which is Washington, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Very nice. Is it a big place? Pretty remote? What's it like?
It's a small town. Good vibes. Nice people. Lots of hiking and nature, and there's a big trail. It's quite a famous trail. It's called the Juan de Fuca Trail that connects a bunch of beaches and stuff along the coast there. So a bunch of the beaches from Souk are kind of in there, and it's great hospitality, but small town.
Oh, it sounds lovely.
Yeah,
really does. Very nice. Great place for mindfulness, Chris. I'm not sure if it's a great place for Minecraft, but I guess it turned out to be. Huh?
I did that before I left. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Yes. I think that's a great. It's a good example there of just being aware, non-judgmentally. That's all that mindfulness stuff is about. Aware of what's going on. think we mentioned one time, kind of a nice practice. If you're into listening to music, like just pick one instrument and listen to that one instrument throughout the song. Sometimes that's kind of a neat way to focus and just kind of be really present for that piece in the music. And I think Brooke, you said something once about like look around and point out everything that's blue or something like that, right?
Yeah, well, game of I Spy with yourself.
Yeah. It's just ways to kind of be in the present moment.
Exactly.
I like that. Well, guys, do we have a topic this evening, an ambush where I guess two of us don't know the topic, one of us does?
Yep, I got one for you.
Okay, I'm eager.
Excited?
I'm very excited.
Brooke topic.
Oh boy.
I'm joking.
We love the Brooke topics.
I think it's not a topic you would expect from me.
Okay, well, Brooke, you always give us the unexpected, so bring it on.
Ready?
Yes,
I'm sending it.
Okay.
I just had to double check that I was sending it to you, Ryan, not like in case it went to some other Ryan that I might know.
Okay, got it. It's a common name these days.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
I love Ryan's reactions.
Yeah.
What are we in for?
Chris is like sweating. Like, oh no, this is bad. This is a bad thing. It's a bad sign. Are you nervous right now, Christopher?
Yeah, I'm gonna go to my spa. I'll be back.
I
think you're gonna like this topic. I think, Chris, you're gonna like this topic too. Yeah.
I already like this topic. Okay, here we go. Therapy, psychology, and mental health in media. How is the field portrayed in popular media? How has it changed over the decades? Any shows that stand out as highly accurate or inaccurate? So we're talking about how therapy is portrayed in movies and TV. Yeah. I suppose literature would count as well, like
sure,
any sort of media, and how therapy is portrayed. Whoa,
and mental health in general, right? Because you know, there is stigma or stereotyping and
absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it has changed as we learn more about the field and how it's portrayed in media. But a lot of times that's somebody's like first interaction with what it might be like. Like people are curious, and prior to the internet, you just had shows and movies. And if you were curious about what therapy was like, you would maybe some of your formulation was actually coming from shows or movies that you were watching, right?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I mean, to this day in the New Yorker, like there's always often a depiction of therapy, which is like they show classic psychoanalysis, you know, someone on the couch saying something as a you know, a one panel comic strip, and they're saying something kind of absurd, and the therapist says something kind of absurd or profound. Like yeah, people can get the idea that that's what therapy is, and boy, we can go through all the different ways that therapists have shown up on TV and in film. It's pretty amazing. I have a bias, or not a bias. I have an opinion that a lot of times it's pretty inaccurate. Yes. The stuff we see on TV and in movies is not all that accurate to what actually happens in a therapy office. And some might say, well, maybe it just doesn't happen in your office that way. Well, I've supervised clinicians. I've talked to a lot of people, kind of know what goes on in most therapy offices. And it's not really what you see on, you know, Analyze This, that whole movie there, or What About Bob, or some of the others where it's just pretty absurd, you know? Yeah. But it's there's so much to say here. I'll step back for a minute.
It's hard to know even where to start, right? Like, yeah, I feel like I showed an interest in this field a long time ago when I was a teenager. So I was always drawn to movies that were more involving mental health, or so like Girl Interrupted way back in the day, right? Or Patch Adams, even. That's kind of more of a classic-y, yeah, and just being drawn to, and then you're curious, like, is this actually how it goes or not? And yeah, I don't know. Chris, do you have any that come to mind from maybe when you were younger, maybe not recent ones?
What About Bob is definitely a classic one for sure. You mentioned Patch Adams as well. I was going to mention that we talked about this in the previous podcast, that we went to the Psychotherapy Networker Symposium, and Brooke and I were hell-bent on trying to find John Gottman, a very well-known relationship psychologist. We kept on seeing a look-alike, so a fellow of around the same height and stature, and we're so disappointed. We're like, oh, that's not John Gottman, that's the look-alike guy. We found out once we got home, the look-alike guy was actually Steven Spielberg. And so we're so focused on finding a psychologist that most of you probably never heard of, that we were blind to the fact that we could have probably met Steven Spielberg, who was kind of going in and out of seminars and hanging out. But his movies actually stand out to me, oddly enough. These filmmakers do such a fantastic job of weaving psychology into their storylines, and I think one of the reasons why his movies tend to resonate with people is because of that. There's a very genuine, authentic element to it. So, for instance, for him, he experienced a lot of bullying growing up, as well as an absentee father. So there's always a childlike sense of wonder in his movies. So I think sometimes we connect with movies for very deep psychological reasons. And it can move us, can evoke a range of emotions, right? As a result. So that's more subtle, the themes that are in there. And I think that's why his movies are so effective. But yeah, there's these more overt ones, right? One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and a lot of movies on addiction, like you're thinking of, is it Leaving Las Vegas? Was that one?
Oh yeah. It's a big one.
Yeah. And what also stands out is even like a more recent one, like Silver Linings Playbook.
Mm-hmm.
And just the depiction of the American psychiatric hospital, right? So I agree. I think overall they are maybe not conveyed most effectively, but I do feel we might be going in the right direction a bit.
What makes you say that, Chris?
I think that's a good question. Maybe back to just the whole idea of stigma. More people are more open to actually receiving therapy. I think back, I guess it wasn't too long ago, but when you think of psychology or therapists, Dr. Phil would pop into your mind, and what a dramatization of therapy. When it comes to, I think Ryan especially is very connected to, the psychotherapy field, and you never hear that guy's name in any conferences. It's just, again, it's dramatic. It's in your face. It's not a fair depiction of what therapy is like or psychology is like. But it's very popular. Whereas I think more recently, there's some therapists, like true therapists, who are becoming more mainstream, like your Brene Browns, who actually have a lot of good things to say.
Yeah.
So it's not technically film, I guess. So maybe I'm deviating from that a bit.
No,
but
it's still media, right? And I agree. I feel like historically, mental health characters in shows or movies were like the monsters. They were someone to be feared. There was something, because they were consistent and unstable and unpredictable. And yeah, so it was, there was, I think, a lot of fear around that. And now I think they're trying to be a bit more compassionate. Like movies are trying to show that, yeah, here's the main character who has social anxiety, or a panic attack might happen in a movie. And sure, it might not be completely accurate, the depiction, but at least it's not villainized.
Yeah.
Well, honestly,
all the time. Sometimes it is.
Here's one though where life imitates art, where oftentimes when there's a crime, at least down here, people will quickly jump to, oh, this is a person with a mental illness. When oftentimes the person doesn't have a mental illness, or people start to believe, this is an interesting black swan piece here, we could save for next time. People start to believe, well, if a lot of people who commit crimes, these kind of heinous crimes, have mental illness, then does that mean that people with mental illness all commit crimes? And that is that's a bad correlation to start making, because the vast majority of people with mental illness, even severe mental illness, would never commit crimes. They're never violent or dangerous in that way. But there certainly have been many films, horror films, just action suspense films, where you get the sense that the villain is someone with a mental illness, and I think that sadly, changes people's view of mental illness and the mental ill, right?
A more recent movie, The Joker.
Yeah, there we go.
That was all about like mental illness and historical trauma and that sort of thing too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, a lot of these movies, like another one that pops into my mind, I'm not sure if you're a Fairly Brothers fan, but me, myself, and Irene. So again, it's often an extreme example of a mental health disorder, and often it's not that clear cut. Yeah, so again, kind of over the top, and in that case, kind of a source of humor, which maybe doesn't really honor those who are maybe dealing with similar conditions.
Very true. All right, I'm going to plug something here. I'm going to self-plug, if that's all right.
Go for it.
There's this book called The Happiness Illusion, how the media sold us a fairy tale, right? And I actually was able to write a chapter in this book.
Ooh.
I know. What does it say? Okay, it says the self-knowledge industry and myths of happiness. And what I did, this is a book written from a Jungian perspective. Like a lot of stuff was about Carl Jung. And I got to write this chapter talking about how a lot of the therapists depicted on film and on TV fit into a variety of Jungian archetypes, and how they're again not very accurate towards to what actual therapy looks like. But and my belief is that, I mean, there's two things. For one thing, we're talking about entertainment. Entertainment's there to entertain. It's for fun. It's for, they're not there to educate us necessarily on what actual therapy looks like. Because honestly, to tell you the truth, a lot of actual therapy is pretty boring. It doesn't, or it would be boring maybe to an outside viewer. It's a lot of compassion and empathy, and listening to stories and trying to patch things together. That wouldn't make necessarily great viewing for today's culture in a 90-minute movie or a 10 episode series. But we so there's the entertainment part, that they're not necessarily there for education. But I also think that there are different biases that come in. The screenwriters are people too, and they have their own ideas, maybe their own experiences in therapy. And my argument here is that from a Jungian viewpoint, maybe some of them have sort of archetypes, which are kind of a collection of personality traits that someone might have. So I talked about how there are therapists who fit maybe with the archetype of the king or queen, which is kind of a familiar one for Jungian circles, which might be like Dr. Melfi from The Sopranos. She was someone who was wise and grounded and patient, and she could work with her client, Tony Soprano, who had panic attacks, but also was killing people and all this other stuff. But she stayed a real rock for him, which is pretty remarkable. I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie Ordinary People. This is an early 80s movie. Fantastic movie that has actually a good portrayal of a therapist there. This guy, Dr. Berger, who was Judd Hirsch. He was a very strong, stable object for his client there. So these are some of the better ones, but there's certainly therapists who are more like I had a warrior archetype. So the therapists who kind of fight with their clients when they're in the room. I don't know if you guys ever watched the show In Treatment on HBO, but that's something that was out about 10, 12 years ago. And I guess they've just put out some new episodes recently with a different therapist. But this is a guy who came, he even said in one of the episodes that he comes from the school of thought where the client is always wrong. So whatever a client presents, he wants to come in with a contrarian viewpoint, you know? And he's oftentimes start almost fighting with his clients before they even sat down. Like, you know, hey, I'm feeling upset today. Oh, you're not upset. You're just feeling guilty or something like that. He'd like start stirring the pot there a little bit with them. Made for great viewing, but wasn't, I don't believe, all that accurate for a lot of therapists. The magician is another one I use as an archetype. I hope you don't mind me going through my little lecture here.
No, this is great.
Oh, go for it.
The magician, which I put Dr. Phil into that category because Dr. Phil somehow, you know, someone comes in, they've got a big problem, usually big, you know, massive problem they've been dealing with for a long time. Dr. Phil would like throw some Southern platitudes at him, you know, how's that working for you? And, you know, that dog don't hunt or whatever you might say. And, and then suddenly after 45 minutes, the person's in tears and they're hugging it out and everything's better, right? Which is, and I had clients during Dr. Phil's heyday who would be like, hey, can't we just do some Dr. Phil stuff in here? I'm like, yeah, that'd be great if it was actually therapy, because I don't know how you just kind of concoct a solution in a single session that where everything falls into place.
Yeah.
I put some people might not like this, but I put Robin Williams, the therapist from Good Will Hunting, in that category too, as the magician, right?
Yeah.
Because
his took a little longer, at least with Matt Damon.
His did take took a little bit longer. It involved some physical violence when they had a fight with each other. But at the end, there was just this one intervention where Robin Williams was saying, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault." And Matt Damon was like, "No, you know, don't say that to me. Don't mess with me." And then he cried and they hugged it out and he was fine. I'm not saying that breakthroughs don't happen in therapy. They certainly do, and we experience them all the time. But something that's just like a one and done fix for somebody is not all that common. Certainly the idea of the lover as an archetype of therapist, which has been unfortunately misused many times in therapy. So many times where the boundaries crossed and the therapist becomes a lover to the client, which, as we all know, is like rule number one that can never happen in therapy, or that should never happen in therapy. Massive violation. But movies like Prince of Tides, Mr. Jones, 12 Monkeys, a movie called The Sessions, even 50-50, the movie with Anna Kendrick and Seth Rogen. And, you know, she became a kind of girlfriend of one of her clients.
Yeah.
Movie Tin Cup with Rene Russo and what's his name? The guy from Dances with Wolves. Anyway, that they fell in love as well.
Kevin Costner?
Kevin Costner, yeah, that's right. It's a golfing movie. Anyway, so way too many movies that show that there's a romantic connection between therapist and client, sadly. And then, of course, there's the fool, which I think is another archetype that we see a lot. That would be Leo Marvin from What About Bob? You know, he writes this book about baby steps, and suddenly his client is there on his vacation with him, and Leo Marvin is like kind of nuttier than his client in a lot of ways. I mean, and that's just, it's funny and it makes for great comedy and kind of an interesting show. But man, there's a lot of those out there. This is where a lot of the jokes come from, and in the cartoons and different little skits on Saturday Night Live, something like that. And then finally, the last one I'll mention is the shadow, which is the therapist who is really kind of sinister. You know, kind of the evil one. The girl with the dragon tattoo was one of those. There's one of those in there. Of course, Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs. He's a psychiatrist, and he had a dark side for sure. And then I do mention Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. She wasn't a therapist per se, but she ran group therapy sessions with the patients on the ward, and she was harsh. She caused Billy Bibbit to kill himself, you could say. So there's a lot of that. Like the therapists are there with kind of this sinister, this hidden agenda that we have. That we're really trying to hurt people when we're sadists behind all of these kind words that we share.
Yeah. Wow, that was a great breakdown.
Well, thank you.
Appreciated that. Yeah.
Thank you.
You've seen a lot of movies.
I had to do
a lot of research.
I did a lot of research, and I do gravitate towards movies and films with therapists in them, just because I want to see. Like I want to see, but I don't want to see. Like
yeah,
like cringing. Like what are they gonna do now? Oh no,
so there's also like on Netflix right now. There's a show that people quite love. It's not cringy for me to watch, but Mindhunter. And have you seen that, where they're going and they're trying to like profile and whatnot? But and I'm sure this happens for all different like professions in the media, but they break down, like they'll say something like cognitive behavior or CBT, which is cognitive behavior therapy, and like work it into the script. You know, so they're like trying to educate, and the acronyms and the information is correct that they're providing definitions to terms. But when, in the context of the scene, I like can't help but roll my eyes,
Yes. Yeah. There was a movie that came out a few years ago called Identity that I think had John Cusack in it, of all people, but it was kind of a suspense movie. And there's a group of psychiatrists and psychologists sitting around a table, and they're arguing a case. Like, and it's just so ludicrous. Like it's a dark, smoky room, and they're talking about this, it's a case conference. They're talking about somebody, and they're fighting about the diagnosis. And someone says, you can't say that. This client or this patient has an Axis 3 dissociative identity disorder, right? Which sounds impressive. That sounds, oh, wow, an Axis 3 dissociative identity disorder. That sounds really, boy, that's a big deal. But anyone who's been to graduate school knows that's ridiculous. That's just word salad. That doesn't mean anything. You don't put the Axis, the diagnosis on Axis 3. It's like, this is like millions of dollars into this film. Did anyone consult a therapist to talk about this? Because any therapist would go, no, you can't say that. That's not how it works.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. I'm curious, have you two seen the movie Inside Out by Disney Pixar? So that's kind of an intriguing movie because they're targeting kids, and I think it is psychoeducational in some ways. I think it had a pretty good message at the end. What do you two think about that? Like, they did a good job depicting feelings and emotions. Do you think that would be a movie to recommend to kids?
I thought that it was good, pretty well done. I thought it was age friendly, and Ryan.
They talked to Dacher Keltner and I think Eckner for that. As they were consultants on that. So the big, like, people who are emotion experts, right? And I believe that it was very well done. They're talking about kind of these basic emotions that people have and kind of how they interact with one another, and the ultimate message there of you have to experience some sadness in order to experience joy. Makes a lot of sense. And also, that change and kind of growth into adulthood is hard. Well, those messages right there are great takeaways, I think, from that film.
Yeah, I agree. It's because the premise at first is got to be happy all the time, right?
Yeah.
And the main character wasn't sure the happiness feeling, wasn't sure what to do with all these other ones who wanted to run the show, but things started to go sideways there. So it's more of kind of normalizing the other feelings and emotions and the harmony among them all, and how sadness can lead to a lot of connection and ultimately to happiness. So the goal is not to neglect certain feelings, but to to experience them all.
I guess a little bit of a cynical critic in me though here. I got to bring in the other side, which is I think that's a great movie that I think parents or adults like to watch because it makes them feel good about, oh, this is a great thing for our kids to take in and all that. I wonder though, and it'll be interesting to see maybe years down the line if kids are actually getting all of those messages. Because I showed my kids that movie, they've watched it a few times or a couple times, but really just, I don't know that anything really took there, like as far as absorbing those messages. It's actually pretty complex. The premise and all the characters and everything that's going on there is pretty complex. Yeah. And I'm not sure if kids are able to take that and go, oh, I'm feeling this and this, I need to do that. I'm not sure if it's generalizing to their lives. I don't know if kids are going to a Pixar movie to learn life lessons, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember I was talking to a young client and I asked him if he saw the movie and he's like, I do. I just love the anger guy. You're so funny.
Yeah. Right. I think we grown-ups kind of hope that it's going to be helping to shape and guide the younger generations. I don't know, but we'll see.
It's funny.
We'll see. Yeah, but that's a great, as far as mental health and just kind of emotional awareness. And that was one that was very intentional. It wasn't a byproduct. That was what they were doing, and they consulted the experts from the very beginning in creating that film, and they made what they wanted to make.
For sure. I was just thinking, and it might be deviating from the topic a bit here, but I use pop culture and movies and shows a lot in sessions. Often there's a huge stigma there and how people are watching too much Netflix and whatnot. So it has usually a negative connotation to it, but you can learn a tremendous amount about someone by the preferences, like the types of shows they watch and the characters they gravitate towards. So for instance, I worked with a teenager and, he really didn't want to be in session. And so we talked a bit about the shows he likes to watch, and The Walking Dead was one of them. And he said, Daryl, I'm not sure if you guys are Walking Dead fans, was his favorite character. And I actually watched the show and I knew that Daryl was someone who was very misunderstood at first. And he had a kind of a physically, mentally strong persona, but he had a huge, soft and emotional side. He's very loyal and he cared, a lot of compassion there too. So he's actually one of the more compelling characters in there. And he definitely, that character resonated with him. So I was kind of convinced that, maybe those are maybe qualities that he has, or maybe those are qualities that he aspires to have. So I do recommend if people talk, if we're watching tons of movies and shows anyway, then you can have some fantastic conversations to do with them, talking about characters or just plots and whatnot. So I want to throw that out there. So it could be parents as well. I always encourage parents to talk to, if you don't know what your kids are watching, then maybe research it a bit so you can talk to them about it, because instead of just shutting it down and saying, oh, you shouldn't be watching that or whatever it might be.
Great point. Right. Yeah. What are the kids watching? Who are the favorite characters? Who do they identify with? Right. Who's most like you? You can have great conversations based on those sorts of things. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And these shows are rich in metaphors and analogies. And so it can also be very beneficial that way too. So I feel with a lot of clients, we got to find creative ways to get the psychology across through avenues like pop culture.
So should we mention, speaking of all that, 13 Reasons Why?
Oh, yeah.
That's a big one. I don't know, Brooke, you work with that population more than any of us. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I thought that show, I was surprised by it. I felt that it was extremely triggering.
Just to back up, 13 Reasons Why, a show about a girl. It's based on a novel? I can't remember. But either way, it's a show about a girl who ends up completing suicide, but she leaves letters or notes or something that talks about. Oh, cassettes. That's right, cassettes.
Cassettes, yeah.
Kind of delineating the reasons why she did this.
Yeah. And it goes into, experiences and different traumas, and then the spiraling of the people who are listening to the tapes as well, right? And so I felt that it was quite a triggering show. It generated, I think, a lot of conversation for people. I think it did good at opening the door to talk about difficult conversations of what teens can be experiencing. Not everyone is experiencing, but
yeah. How was therapy depicted in that show, Brooke?
Therapy itself, it was a few years ago. I don't remember if there was like the school therapist. I don't remember if the main male character went to therapy.
Yeah.
It was just a school therapist.
I seem to recall, I never actually watched the show, but I think someone was telling me that she went to go talk to the school counselor.
Yeah.
And the school counselor was on a call or something like that. And then she kind of walked off, or felt that he didn't care about her or something like that.
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
Yeah. And so I think the school counselor received like one of the cassettes of like, this is one of the reasons why.
It was regardless, it was something that was a big deal in the mental health community when the series came out, because, and people were kind of torn, because just like you're saying, Brooke, like it's something that maybe opened up a lot of conversations and discussions about people who are feeling marginalized or abused or neglected, or having suicidal thoughts. And these are all important conversations to have. However, the way that the messaging was kind of like, it almost kind of glorified the suicidality. Like it kind of gave a noble victim sort of status to her in some ways, and made and really externalized a lot of stuff. Like you guys are all the reasons why. Like didn't have much. I didn't watch the whole series, but the criticism was it kind of glorified it a bit and made it seem like, hey, you can have this much notoriety too if you are feeling this bad. And that's what scared people.
Nothing, there wasn't a lot of hope in the series.
Right.
We didn't leave feeling like, oh, this is how someone overcomes these experiences. This is how you can get through this. It was, and here's a new spiral, because you're hearing her main spiral, the main character, but then all of her social network, as more and more is being exposed, they're all going down their own spirals, but nobody's helping them, right? Like, and it's, so just this heavy sense of hopelessness and powerlessness, but there is a way to overcome. So it was actually quite bleak. Like, not just because the topics were heavy, but literally it was like, but you can, like, there's help out there for you, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see that more, as to maybe depict the seriousness of some of these mental health challenges, but having some tangible ways in which they can navigate through that, more hopeful messaging and more positive outcomes.
Yeah,
certainly. Sure.
Or even for things to be normalized a bit. Like, I know our field kind of turns into a comedy show sometimes for people, like, or there's another Netflix show, Sex Education. And so it's about teenagers and what teenagers are going through or whatever. But the main character's mom is a sex therapist who like has a home office. And so then the son ends up being like a pseudo therapist for his friends at school. It's quite a funny show. But anyways, it would be great if in future media that it's normalized in a normal way. Like if somebody were to leave a meeting up with their friend for coffee and being like, oh, sorry, I have my therapy appointment and then I'll call you later. Like, just in casual conversation. Sure. And for someone to be like, okay, cool, we'll catch up with you later. Like, can we normalize it a bit? Or sure. I guess we're not quite at that level. We're still trying to reduce the stigma, or say what you're experiencing is normal and valid, and it's not just you. You're not alone in your struggles. I think we're still at that part, but that's okay. We'll get there.
That's the hope. I certainly share that view, Brooke. I mean, even here in LA, where therapy is pretty widely accepted, there still is a stigma to that. You know, people don't talk about their therapy appointment with as much ease as they talk about their dental appointment, right?
For sure. Or like if you bumped into someone and they're like, oh yeah, I just finished my yoga class.
Yeah.
Or whatever it might be.
Yep.
Granted, it is a bit more personal. Obviously, it's a lot more personal, but
what's
gets a little better.
The fear is that raises the question of, oh, what's wrong with you, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're going to therapy. Well, what's your
Are
issue?
you okay?
What's your problem, right? Where I would say we all got a problem. We all have many problems, you know, and we could all benefit from having someone, an objective outsider, to help us through life's bumps in the road, you know, or whether it's a mental illness or a life circumstance or adjusting to some new circumstance in your life. I think we could all use some help. So that's my bias. I'm a psychologist. I stand by it.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, back to the question though. So media and mental illness, has it changed over the decades? So we already talked about that a little bit. Chris seems to believe that maybe it's getting a little better.
I think so too.
And I would say that I believe one thing that I'm very much in favor of is a lot more celebrities and athletes are talking about their own mental illness and struggles with mental illness, right?
Whole different form of media there.
Whole different form of media, right. I mean, a lot of from Kevin Love talking about his panic attacks, to Michael Phelps talking about his depression and marijuana use, to Naomi, the tennis player, herself talking about kind of a social anxiety. I mean, there are a lot of people talking about, and a lot of athletes also talking about abuse in their past and their history. Like, I think that's great, because not just because, you know, it's getting more awareness, but it's these people who have achieved so highly. You know, they're famous, you know, for whatever reason, for their athletic prowess or acting skills, whatever it is. But they're also able to say, hey, look, I deal with these things too, you know, and if I deal with this stuff and can go to therapy or get treatment or take medication, whatever I need to do, you can too. And I think that's great for people who've idealized and idolized these folks to be able to know, okay, it's not weird for me to struggle with this stuff, you know?
Yeah. I had a client that came in and she saw a show with Prince Harry on it. And I guess Prince Harry talked about EMDR and he was doing the butterfly hug. So the client coming in and say, well, how do you do this butterfly hug and EMDR? And she's trying to move her eyes back and forth while doing the butterfly hug. And it led to a good conversation, you know, got to explain how the technique kind of works. And we got to do it that session, but she was pretty excited about it and hopeful that it could help her out. So there we go. Prince Harry.
I'm a big fan of the royal kids there and all the things they're doing for mental health. That's awesome. I love that. That's the torch they're carrying, you know. Let's work on these things. It's great. That is great. I mean, Harry's story is compelling, and I mean, yeah, it speaks to a lot of people. It speaks to me. I relate to him in that he lost his mom and didn't really deal with that stuff for a long time, and that's similar to my own story. I'm like, yeah, way to go, Harry. Speak it loud and proud, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we're saying that maybe there's more discussion. Millennials and Generation Z are talking about things a lot more than their predecessors, which I think is great.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most highly accurate therapy or mental health depiction that you've seen?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't even know.
One, I would say our good friend Esther Perel, who has a podcast, another form of media, a very popular podcast where she talks to couples and does some couples work. But she's actually doing actual couples work with actual couples, really. So yes, that's pretty accurate because she's doing the work. It's just a few sessions, but she's helping people out. So Esther Perel, I'd say, is doing some pretty accurate work.
Yeah, there's some fantastic podcasts and shows, like with YouTube videos and TED Talks. Like some of the big guns there are, you can access their knowledge so readily.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to like a TV show or movie, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But what popped into my mind though is I watched the show Fleabag. It's like a British comedy, a little raunchy, but the main character goes to a therapy session just because she wanted to get a refund. It was a gift, so she wanted to get her money back. And so she kind of adds dialogue. She talks to the camera, right? She shares her thoughts as she goes through it. So she thought it'd just be a waste of time, and she's been through this before. And I think the therapist kind of surprised her a bit, pointed out some defense mechanisms, and got her to think of a bunch of things. So actually turned out to be a time well spent, and very led to some good insight and introspection. So I enjoyed that just because of it. There was that connotation there that, oh, therapy is just someone's going to ask you, tell me more, or tell me what you're thinking or feeling, and but actually turned into a pretty humorous yet effective segment.
It's great. I will actually go back a little bit on my word a little and say that the show In Treatment, which this is a therapist who kind of fights with his clients. Some of that stuff is I think way over the top and just entertainment value. But there are a lot of things in the therapy sessions themselves that are pretty accurate to actual therapeutic work. I mean, there's these kind of transference things, like feelings between the therapist and the client. They're talking about their own relationship and about how that influences the work. There's deception. There's other things that are going on that are actually pretty compelling, and things that we might see. I would say that the problem with that show is that it was also condensed. Like even each episode of that show was a therapy session, but it was a half hour long. So like even a 50-minute or 45-minute therapy session condensed to 30 minutes, but it also brings in like a year's worth of work into nearly every session. Like there's so much going on, but a lot of stuff that's portrayed in there is pretty good. So I would suggest In Treatment, season 1, Gabriel Byrne in that show. It's pretty good stuff. Little I used to watch that show with a love-hate sort of feeling, because I kind of dreaded all of the little inaccuracies and his fighting with his clients, but some of it was pretty good. Brooke, do you have a favorite?
I don't think I do. I don't think that I've come across something where I'm like, oh, that was pretty bang on. I think, okay. Yeah, nothing's good, which is funny because it's my topic. I should have maybe thought about that ahead of time, but yeah, I feel like it's happening more in movies where clients are going to therapy, which is a good thing. And I'm just trying to think. I've definitely seen moments in these episodes where like the client reaction is pretty good, or like I kind of chuckle at like the awkward silence, but the therapist is totally okay with it, and you can tell that the client's uncomfortable with it, like in these shows and stuff. Because we do that. There is a reason that we stay quiet as therapists. We're okay with it. We can sit there for the whole hour and be quiet if we have to.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's true. The other thing, we all had different offices. Like Ryan, your office probably depicts more what a cinematic therapy office is. Brooke and I, we don't have like couches, or they're kind of swivel leather chairs kind of thing. So we get that a lot.
Oh, like a desk chair.
A desk chair, yeah. So we thought, I thought it'd be a couch in here. Like you would lie down and we'd. So that's often depicted more of the psychodynamic traditional couch there.
Did I tell you guys I had one of those couches?
Yes. You sent us photos. You were very proud of it. Yeah.
Yes, I have one. I still have it. I'm not in an office at the moment, but and that it was a second couch. It was something that wasn't really used. It was more decoration, but I loved having it. I wanted to have one of those couches from the moment I became a therapist. So it's a chaise lounge, like, you know, fainting couch, whatever you might call that. But
yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it was fun to have. Rarely used. Usually used when I would have a bunch of students in the office and we need extra spaces to sit. That was about it. But yes, so one other I'm going to throw out there is some of the other reality shows like Hoarders. I don't know if you guys ever watched Hoarders.
Oh, yeah.
Oftentimes they'll bring in therapists or Hoarders always had therapists there where they would talk to the people, and it was kind of a classic sort of CBT approach, right? Like, all right, what do you think about this this stuff? What do you think about the collection of stuff you have here, and how can we kind of reframe those thoughts, and what are the irrational beliefs and things like that, which was decent, but unfortunately hoarding is it goes pretty deep. It's hard for people to just kind of think their way through that issue, and would have a really hard time working through kind of letting go of these massive amounts of papers and what everyone else would see as trash, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we should talk about hoarding sometime. I think that's a good topic. Get
It is
a
a good topic.
hoarding expert to talk about what's going on there. Well, good. All right, we covered our topic here, Brooke.
I think so. There's a bunch of movies and shows for everyone to watch now. Like,
yeah, I would say Ordinary People. If you guys really want a nice film to catch up to kind of see some good therapy, Ordinary People is a great one. It's a little dated at 1980, you know, but good film. All right, that's it for us. We will say goodnight for now. Please like and subscribe everywhere that you find podcasts. Write to us at info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com and just come back and see us again sometime. Don't forget to read the book. We have the book Black Swan. If you still have time, it's a big book, but you still have time to read that. We're going to talk about it next week. But that's it for now. Have a good night, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Toodles.